So I read the Bible, I formed an opinion from what I read, and then I applied it and began to do something with that application. How do I know that what I just did there was correct, that I actually got the correct meaning and application out of the text of Scripture? Well, that whole idea is the idea of hermeneutics, the art of interpreting Scripture. What are the principles that we use to make sure we're getting the correct meaning and interpretation out of Scripture? And so that's what I'm going to walk through. Our next step in this video, we're going to walk through that. This is a part of a playlist on our channel called The Disciple, that if you want to know how to become a more effective follower of Christ, then we walk through a number of different things, a number of different issues in this playlist. So I encourage you to check our channel, check playlist The Disciple. And it's categorized, and this particular category is under hermeneutics. So how do I make sure that I'm getting the correct meaning and application from Scripture? Well, the next step, so the video above this will be the first step, but the next step is dealing with the reality that when I come to Scripture, I'm bringing my own views and opinions and ways of looking at things to the table. And part of the challenge is sometimes we don't realize that. We think that our perspective is just common sense, just every human being views it this way, and often that is not the case. And so I need to be aware that that's happening. It happens subconsciously even, that we're not even aware that an opinion is showing up as we're reading the Bible, and it shades our ability to interpret it. We often unintentionally read into Scripture our own perspective, our own view, our own values, and we end up walking away from Scripture really just getting our own ideas affirmed rather than really getting what God is attempting to say to us in Scripture. So how do we work against that? So first is by just being aware. The more I begin to identify my views and perspectives, the more I'm going to be able to see that as I'm reading Scripture. So what do I think is right? What do I think is wrong? Do I lean in some kind of extreme direction, actually? Do I have a naturalistic view? I'm always looking for a natural explanation for everything. Do I have a superstitious worldview? Am I always believing that all these different coincidences point to some kind of a sign? What kind of perspective do I have? What are my views on politics? What are my views on sexuality? What are my views on gender roles and parenting and marriage and family and all of those kind of things? And that's going to all factor into what I'm pulling out of Scripture. And so the more I am identifying my views, the more I can recognize that they're present as I'm studying Scripture. A second step in this is to notice when I believe the Bible is affirming my perspective or my way of living. And if I see that, it doesn't mean that I'm interpreting incorrectly. It's just, if it's in agreement with me, I want to double check it. So now I'm going to reconsider. I'm going to read through that passage again and ask, is that really the case? Because this seems to be affirming my view, my approach. Is that really what this is saying? And that second walkthrough might help us to really reconsider it and possibly prevent making some wrong assumptions. Thirdly is to try to understand the view of the author. So from that author's cultural position and other things that author has said, does this conclusion actually match? Like, is it creating some kind of contradiction in what happens here, or is it flowing? Does it make sense that this person would hold this view and make this assertion? Then lastly, I want to pursue the authors, whether it's the human author or whether it's God and inspiring the ideas behind it. I want to follow the author's intended meaning and accept where it leads. So I'm going to try to be okay if where I land is a viewpoint that I don't hold or do, a position that I don't hold or do, and that it's going to mean that either I can continue the way I've been living or I'm going to have to change. No matter what the outcome is, I'm going to let the text of Scripture determine where I land. And I think if we do things like that, we're on our way to being able to get the correct interpretation of Scripture. Now, in the videos ahead, when we continue to cycle through touching on hermeneutics, I'll start picking on some nuts and bolts things as well. But these first two videos are kind of preventative things that I need to be considering, asking myself, working on myself with to make sure that I'm, again, getting the correct meaning and application of Scripture. If you have any questions regarding that, the content of this video, or any of the videos in this series, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'd be glad to answer your questions. If you live in the Pittsburgh area and you would like help in your own growth in your faith, you're welcome to join us anytime, Wednesdays at 6:30 and Sundays at 10 a.m. at Bethel Assembly of God, 2501 Staten Street. Also, if you find this content valuable, please share it with someone or like it or interact with it in a way that gets it promoted. So thank you so much. God bless.